Okay guys, good evening. Just another couple of people to sit down. Sorry, I can't see you all. Okay, thank you for your patience in waiting for the talk to start. Okay. Right, good evening. My name is Sue Mannion and I am the manager of the Student Hub. Okay, and I'd like to welcome you all here to our annual private housing evening. Hopefully you're going to get lots of information that's going to set you on the road to looking for your private accommodation. But before we start, I've got to do a couple of housekeeping points. If the fire alarm goes off, all the fire exits are, if you see the green people, this is my air hostess bit, so to the side, to the back and up the stairs. So just remember, if it goes off, orderly manner, straight out of the exits, please. Can you please turn your phones to silent? You don't need to turn them off, as a member of the team is going to be tweeting throughout the presentation, so just so that you can see what's going on. Finally, we do have an online survey that we'd like you to complete. It's going to be open online for a whole week, and you can win, I think they're called Dr. Beats, Dr. Dre, something, headphones. I know, I'm old, but they're headphones, and they're supposed to be really, really good. So complete the survey, I know, complete the survey, and you could win those. So, now, let's get on to why we're here. So, the majority of you, I presume, all live in halls, and though we would love to keep you in our halls, unfortunately we don't have enough bed spaces. So, we're kicking you out and sending you out into the big wide world of private accommodation. It can be really, really exciting, but it can also be very scary. Okay, because there's lots of things that you've got to start considering. So this evening, we're hoping that we're going to show you what your housing journey is going to be like. So we're going to take you from step 1, finding a flatmate, all the way to step 7, moving in and to your new home, and then what to do with your tenancy when it comes to an end. So let's take a look at the first important steps you're going to need to take.
Right, now one of the things you need to think about is who you're actually going to live with. So you may want to live with your best friend because you get on like a house on fire, but there's things to think about. So tidiness, for example, you may be a very tidy individual, but your best mate might be a complete slob, so that's not going to work, is it? So it is something to think about. Yeah, you know who that is. Noise and sleeping patterns as well. So if your best mate's up till 3 in the morning playing computer games and you're not, that could be a problem as well. Also friends and partners. So you might live in a house with 3 or 4 other people, but if they're having their partners over every night, that might not work either. So think about that one. Yeah. Yes, steady. Also, comparable budgets. So you've got to realise that you might be able to afford a certain amount, but your mate might not be able to. So you might have to be a little bit of give and take there as well when you think about what you're going to spend. Also, things like diets. So are you going to live with a vegetarian or a vegan, that kind of thing? Yeah, I know. They're people as well, okay? But it is something to think about if you've got maybe another fridge or something to bear in mind. And the last one is length of stay. You might want to stay for a year or 2, but if your mate might only want to stay for 9 months. It's really important you think about these things before you actually sign any contracts or go any further. Okay, also the next one is actually setting a budget, how much you can actually afford. So these are average prices we're looking at here, by the way, so don't get too panicky. So rent depends on how much who you're sharing with, what sort of property you've got, but you're looking at about £140 per person per week upwards, okay? Bills, also utility bills, electricity, gas, that kind of thing. Average, you'd be looking about £25 to £30 per person per week as well. Food, well, that's up to you, this one, isn't it? How much you're going to eat. But also there are essential items that you might want to share with your friends, like washing up liquid, washing powder, that kind of thing. So it might be better to have a kitty that you'll put a few quid in a week for. Travel. Now, hopefully a lot of you know this. As a full-time student, you do get a 30% discount on travel in London. If you're not already doing that, come and see it at the Student Hub and give the advice of how to apply for that. It's really important. Socialising, okay, so at the end of the week you all might want to go down to the pub or to the cinema. Unfortunately it does cost. Always put some money aside for it because you don't want to be sitting at home on a Saturday night and all your mates are out, so pretty boring. So once again, remember, this budget is just an approximation. You're looking at about an average of 300 to 350 quid a week, approximately. This depends on a lot of factors. Okay, so obviously there's the different types of accommodation. If you've all got one of these newspapers, you should have. This slide's actually in there in more detail, so you can see it in there. Now, obviously, this is directly influenced by the number of people you actually want to share with, and also your budget. So obviously, take care of steps 1 and 2 first before you actually go house hunting. So obviously, if there's a group of 4 of you, then of course the chances you're going to look for a big house share, and this will also be a cheaper way to rent. It keeps the bills down a bit. Obviously, if you want to live alone, fair enough. You're looking at a studio or a bed sit, but obviously you've got to pay for the whole lot yourself, so obviously you need a bit of money for that one. Obviously there are other options to look at, so you can live with a resident landlord, which is essentially lodging, or you can return to purpose-built student halls. Now obviously these days in London there are private hall providers, hopefully you met some of them this evening, so there is another option. Also you've got to be a bit realistic about what you actually are going to get, so obviously, we'd all like to live in somewhere really swish, but unless you have a massive budget, that's really not going to happen. So you need to sit down with your friends and talk about what you want, but you might have to make some compromises as well. What you've got to do is decide what's important for you, the really important bits. I mean, we'd all like to have a swimming pool, but let's be honest, it's not going to happen, okay? Now, if there's a group of you living together, like 3 or 4 people, sometimes the landlord will allow you to use a living room as a bedroom. If, say, for example, you've got a 2-bed place with a living room, and that can save them money as well. Speak to the landlord. Sometimes they don't mind doing that. But do remember, when you're doing that kind of thing, you're still going to need a bit of space to socialise in, like a large kitchen or a small garden. We actually have more guides, which are in our magazines and stuff here. So in the area guide and that, there's a place called Find the Right Property, also in our private housing guide. So do use these. We don't just give them out for fun. They do cost money, so hopefully you'll use them. Now, hopefully you've enjoyed staying with us in halls in your first year, and you'd like to return for the next academic year. Now, as my colleague Sue said, that is unfortunately a bit limited, because we have to look after our new first-year undergraduates, which you all at some point. But you can do this by planning to stay in Evelyn Gardens. Okay. Now, this was recently refurbished, only reopened last year, and it's in Chelsea, so it's only about a 15-minute walk away. And this is exclusively for continuing students only who are not in their final year. Because one thing to remember is Evelyn Gardens only offers a 51-week contract, okay? Now, all the rooms are single, so no sharing, which is nice. Mostly as standard with a few shared facilities, and there's a few en-suite rooms, but not that many. Also, it does have a 24-hour concierge service, so good security, and there's also residence assistants there to help out in the evenings and the weekends, who are students at the college. Now, obviously, this might not appeal to you. You might think, yeah, great, done halls, had my fun, want to move on, no problem. But it's a good idea to know where you actually want to live. Okay, so once again, this is the important one. You should have one of these, this area guide. You can see this slide within this. Now, this guide actually shows where most of our students live. Now, obviously, we'd all like you to live locally near the college, so would we. But you may have to live a little bit further out due to your budget. And this guide actually shows the amount of students that live in each area, so it gives you a good idea. But once again, you may have to compromise a little bit, but there are certain things you want to really take care of. So, for example, travel connections. So where you live, or want to live, does it have good travel connections? Does it have a tube? Does it have buses, etc., that get to the college in a fair time? Amenities. Does it have local shops? Does it have a cinema? Does it have a pub, if that's your thing? And one thing we always recommend, when you're looking at an area and you're quite keen on it, check it out during the day and the evening. Make sure you feel safe going back there overnight. Now, in addition to this area guide, we've actually produced a number of 60-second videos. They're clips of some of the more popular areas that our students live in. And the one we're about to see is for Hammersmith.
Hammersmith is a dynamic area with plenty of shops, restaurants and bars. It's also really close to the River Thames. There's excellent transport links whether you travel by tube, bus or bike. And the Hammersmith Apollo is a major London venue, regularly hosting live music and stand-up comedy. Hammersmith is a popular area of London to live, and as a result can be quite expensive. For a room you can expect to pay upwards of £160 a week, and a 2-bed house could cost up to £575 a week. Hammersmith can be expensive to live, but you get what you pay for, with a great range of bars, restaurants, cafes and an exciting nightlife. For more information, help and property listings, see our accommodation website.
Okay, we actually have quite a few of those videos and you can see them on our website, so do have a look. So, where to look? Now hopefully you've had a good chat tonight with some of the people in the Queen's Tower room. So there are estate agents and letting agents. There's those private hall providers I mentioned earlier. There's quite a few of those in London these days. Obviously there's various student websites and notice boards you can use. But at Imperial College we actually have our own website called Imperial Home Solutions. Now hopefully you've seen this website, that all students have access to it. You just need your college log-on password to get into it. Now all the landlords and agents who advertise on this site are required to give contact information and also copies of safety documentation such as gas safety certificates. We've got about 400 landlords on there with various properties, 23 estate agents, some of whom you'd have met tonight, and 12 private hall providers. So there's quite a lot of information. It's a really good place to start. Also, there's a student message board, so you can place an advert on there if you're looking for someone to share with, or you've got a place yourself you want to advertise on there for a flatmate, so please use it. One of our top tips when dealing with it, when you go on the website to have a look, first of all, keep it broad, okay? There's some brilliant houses outside of the traditional areas that our students live, like Fulham and Hammersmith, and obviously they'll be a little bit cheaper, so it's well worth looking, but please keep it broad and it will give you a better idea what's available. Okay, and just before I go, with regard to Evelyn Gardens, I know some of you have asked me earlier, the applications for this will open later on this week, but if you've got any questions about it, you can contact us at the Student Hub.
Don't laugh. Right, sorry, I pressed the wrong button. Wow, we've gone through quite a lot of steps so far, haven't we? So I'm just going to give you a little recap of what we've done so far. So we've looked at who you want to live with, what is your budget, what type of accommodation you're going to look at, and when you're going to look. So if you look on our timeline here, obviously January and February you all slept in, which was great. Now the time's to start waking up and to start thinking. But you haven't got to rush and start thinking about looking for accommodation right now. It's good to have it in your head about what you want and when you want to do it. But if you go to look for a property with an estate agent now, they will expect you to take that in a couple of weeks. As Danny said, on the Imperial Home Solutions website, there's a large number of landlords, and some of those will let you go and look at the properties now and then not move in till September, October. The majority of the landlords will start putting the properties on during May. So as I'm going to tell you a bit later on, we have a whole series of events that are going to come up in May, so you haven't got to worry. But we have a number of videos that we want to show you this evening, and this is the first.
There are several considerations to bear in mind when trying to find a suitable place to rent. Before viewing any properties, it is critically important to work out what sort of budget you have available. Don't forget that in addition to the actual rent, you may also be liable for household bills and council tax depending on the type of tenancy. Once you've established your budget, this is likely to determine what sort of accommodation you should look for. Generally speaking, it will be less expensive to rent a room in a private house or to share a house with other tenants than it will be to rent a property on your own. Another key consideration will be to find somewhere that is convenient to your workplace, college, university, or friends and family. Check whether a property is near suitable transport links, and remember that the further away from work or college, the more it will cost you in travel. If you have a car, check there is parking available at the property. Once you've established that a certain property is affordable and in a suitable location, then there are a number of other important considerations. Does the house have adequate security? Door and window locks, for example? What sort of heating and insulation does the house have? Remember, a house with central heating and double glazing will generally be less expensive to heat. Also consider the interior. Does it appear to be free from damp and mould? Check the decor is reasonable. Is it furnished? And if so, what is included and what condition is it in? It's also important to consider whether your own belongings would fit in the accommodation. The landlord or the organisation that the tenancy agreement will be with should ensure that the electrical wiring is safe. Do the light switches and sockets appear to be in good working order? Are there any exposed wires? Is there a working smoke alarm? The landlord should be able to provide gas and electrical safety certificates. Before you go to view a property, try to prepare a list of questions in advance so that you don't forget when you're there. Take a friend or family member along for a second opinion. For further advice, get in touch with the contact on screen.
Sorry, I hope you like Safety Shawl. Online, there are 12 videos, all different, giving you lots of different information. But, you know, though they are good fun, they do have a message that you need to listen to. Also, as he said, write a list. If you look at the back of the area guidebook, okay, it opens up, there is a whole list of things that when you go to view properties, questions and things to look out for. One of the things when you go to see a property, when you go and visit an agent or a landlord, new legislation came in February last year that every landlord and every agent must prove to the government that you have a right to rent. Okay, there's lots of information about this online, but basically what it means is that when you are going to take a property, once you've agreed a letting, that you need to show a copy of your passport or a copy of your passport and your visa to prove that you have a right to rent in this country. As I said, there's loads of information online. If you're not sure, you can always pop in to the Student Hub and we will give you any information that you need. Okay, now this evening we're very fortunate. We have Naz with us, who is your union president, and James, who is your deputy president, and they're going to give you some information now as well.
Hello. Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be joining you now. I'm going to talk about our rent guarantor scheme, and now that might sound like absolute gibberish at this point because you're only just starting your housing journey. But a year ago, I was standing outside with some campaign flyers and some free sweets, trying to encourage everyone to vote for me in the election. And it's because I was standing on a manifesto pledge of getting the college to act as a rent guarantor for our students. And fortunately enough, I won the election. Unfortunately, I don't have any free sweets today. But I'm very glad to be able to be here this evening to announce the launch of the college's rent guarantor scheme. So, what is the rent guarantor scheme and what is a rent guarantor? You've already seen what you need to look for when you go around a house, checking locks, etc. But once you've actually decided a place, one of the things you will be asked to provide in the tenancy agreement is a rent guarantor. This is someone who, for most people from the UK, it will be a parent or guardian who basically will say, even if you default or can't pay the rent, they will cover the cost. So it's a way of the landlord knowing that they are going to get the money in the agreement. However, for lots of our students, that's not possible. Say you're an international student, many landlords will not accept your parents as a guarantor, or if your family income is below a certain bracket, or for some reason wherever your family can't be guarantors, then you're in a bit of a problem. And what most landlords do is they will ask for 6 to 12 months of rent up front as a deposit. And obviously this is quite problematic because we're going to have to find 6 or 12 months rent up front, which is pretty difficult even when your student loan has come in. But also it puts the risk on you. So if anything were to go wrong in that year, say you had to take an interruption, you would lose all that money. So this is where the college comes in. So the college has now agreed to act as the guarantor for anyone who needs it. And being Imperial, we don't just have a rent guarantor scheme, but in my opinion, we have the best rent guarantor scheme there is. And the reason it's so good is that, first of all, there are no restrictions on the number of students who can apply for this. So any student who is in a need and can demonstrate that they have no other option will be accepted onto the scheme. It also covers rent up to £250 per week, which is more than any other university. And that means that you guys actually have a good choice of what properties you can live in. The third thing is that Sue and the Student Hubs team have guaranteed a 3-day turnaround, or will best try to, depending on demand. So it means that this will work on the timescales you're looking for when you're looking for property. So the rent guarantor scheme will be open today, but there's no need to apply straight away. Once you've found a property that you're interested in, that's the time to get in contact with the Student Hub, and you can find out more from their website. So I'd just like to say, a thank you to college. So even though the rent guarantor scheme was initiated by the union, it has been through with the provost and with working with college that we've been able to deliver this. So it's great that the college is really looking out for its students. Now, it is an absolute pleasure to be able to introduce James, the Deputy President of the union, to talk about your experiences.
Thank you, Naz, for that. So I sat here in your position 4 years ago. I took in all of this great information that we have on offer here, and then I panicked with my friends. We went out and we got the first house that we saw anyway. So that began my series of unfortunate housing mistakes. The cockroach war of 2013 will never be forgotten. It's very important to prioritise your wishes when you're going and searching for houses for the first time. As you are renting in London, you may have to compromise on what some of your wishes are. For instance, you may want to have more space, but if you're doing this and not compromising on the price, you may have to live further away. Alternatively, you may want to live opposite the Slug in Fulham, but you may have to compromise on sleep. When I started searching for the first time, I used Imperial Home Solutions to begin with, and then I also used Zoopla, both very good to get some initial viewings in to begin with. And when you're out and about on that first viewing day, you can just pop into some estate agents and tell them your requirements. All are quite useful ways of finding houses. So I have some general tips. These are some golden rules that I've picked up over the last 4 or 5 years. The first one is that unlike other university towns in London, there's not one small window for finding houses. There's free houses all the time throughout the summer, so you don't have to rush. Secondly, it's worth considering that most contracts last for around a year. So if you go out in May and get a house, you'll have a house over this summer, but at the end of next year, you will not. Thirdly, deposits-wise, landlords will try and take every penny that you have earned. It's just who they are as people. So when you do move in, make sure to take photographs of every single chip and every bit of damage, and you'll thank yourselves a year later. Finally, in terms of sharing with your future housemates, a tidy house is a happy house. And I do hear that this is going to be put up on YouTube afterwards, this talk. So, Dom, when you're watching this, please bring the glasses downstairs from your bedroom. And on that, here's a short video that we have on renting with friends.
Living in shared rented accommodation can be a great way of saving on costs and making friends. There are, however, a number of ground rules that should be established. In general, it's important to communicate with your housemates before serious problems arise. Everyone in the house needs to ensure that the house functions in a fair and just manner for everyone. The main issues to work out from the beginning will be the payment of rent, food and kitty arrangements, household chores and bills. It is important to be considerate of others. Disagreements can occur over acceptable noise levels and guests staying over. Discussing these issues early on will help. For further advice, get in touch with the contact on screen.
So that's another one of our Safety Sean videos. So I hope you're enjoying these. Okay, right, now where are we up to? Step 6. Fees and deposits. Now we're getting into the nitty-gritty of everything. So when you go to look for a property and you think, that's the one I want, I love it, they're going to ask you to pay a holding deposit. Okay, this is the amount of money that they will hold whilst they take up your references and they prepare the documentation. Now this could be anything from a week's rent to a month's rent. Okay, but don't be led into a false sense that you can go and look at one property with one agent and hold it, and then go and look at another one and hold that. Because the reason is, if you don't then take that property, if you change your mind, they're going to keep your money. Okay? That's why they do it, so that you will commit yourself to that property. So if you're not sure, or your friend hasn't seen it yet, or you're going to live with, do not take it. This year, or last year actually, we had a group of students that went to an agent. One of them said, yes, we're going to take it, we love it, it's brilliant. Their friend didn't like it. They told the agent a day later, they'd actually signed the contract. They told the agent a day later. They ended up with a £42,000 debt. Okay, so and it took us a lot. Yes, I know. Okay, you all think, hold on. Okay, that was an extreme, but it happens. Okay, so I'm being serious. When you go to look for a property, make sure it is the property that you want before you sign anything. They're also going to ask you to pay a security deposit, which could be 6 weeks or 2 months' rent up front, and they will hold this money until the end of the tenancy to cover any rent that you haven't paid or any damage that you've caused. They're also going to ask for a month's rent in advance, and they're also going to ask for administration fees. Now, these fees are to draw up the contracts, to take up your references. But keep an eye out for legislation. In a housing bill in October through government last year, they're trying to stop the agents charging administration fees. That's not going to say that you're not going to pay it anyway, it'll just be called something else. It hasn't become law yet, but keep an eye out. Additional charges. In your contract, it will say that if you pay your rent late, they will charge you £25 for a letter to tell you that you've paid your rent late. There could be a whole list of different charges, inventory check fees, you would normally pay those when you move out. And that could be anything from £100 to £200. Okay, so look at the fees that you're going to be charged. So before you've even moved in, put a box away, you're going to be paying between £1,600 and £2,000. Okay, so it's a lot of money. Then we get to the contract. So what is a contract? A contract is a legally binding document that both you and the landlord are agreeing to abide by. Okay? Let's see what Safety Sean has to say about contract.
When you rent a home, you have either a tenancy agreement or a license to live in the property. Both tenancies and licenses can be either verbal or written, but whatever your agreement is, you have certain legal rights as a tenant. Of course, tenants have certain responsibilities too, such as paying rent on time, keeping the property clean and tidy, and not causing a nuisance, being the main ones. Most landlords will give you a written agreement, but even if you don't have one, you still have rights. If the landlord accepts rent from you for living at the property, then any verbal agreement you've made counts as a legal agreement. Verbal agreements can be more difficult to enforce, so it's worth asking your landlord or the organisation your tenancy agreement is with to put your agreement in writing. This will ensure that both parties have a clear understanding of each other's rights and responsibilities. It also allows you to make sure that there are no unfair terms included in your contract. By reading all the terms and conditions carefully, you'll protect your rights as a tenant. If you have any queries, please raise these with your landlord as soon as possible. In general, your agreement should include the following: names of the tenants, the address of the property you're renting, as well as the landlord's name and address. The agreement will also specify how much the rent is and when it's due, as well as what the rent covers. Water rates, council tax, and some bills may be included. It will also cover how long the agreement is and whether you have to pay a deposit, and if so, what it covers and which government scheme it's protected in. The deposit protection scheme must be mentioned as this is a legal requirement. The agreement should also cover who is responsible for repairs, maintenance and upkeep. Most tenancy agreements will also include an inventory listing all the items that are contained within the house, from cutlery to items of furniture. Finally, whether there are any other rules about pets, guests or smoking, for example. For further advice, get in touch with the on-screen contact.
Okay, so up on the screen, these are the two most popular contracts. So you'll hear them called all different things. They'll be called a contract, a tenancy, an assured short-hold tenancy, a licence. Some are 10 pages long, some are 2 pages long, but all of them have terms and conditions, some that are laid down by law and some that are obligations that the landlord wants you to abide by. So for example, excuse me, if the landlord says, when you move out of the property at the end of the year, I want you to paint the whole front, make it beautiful and landscape the garden. If you sign that contract, then that's what you're agreeing to do. So if at the end of the tenancy you don't paint it, the landlord can charge you for that. So you need to read the clauses in the contract very carefully. Okay, so you will sign an assured short-hold tenancy if you are a group of people. So if there's one of you, if there's 2 of you or more, you will sign an assured short-hold tenancy. This makes you all joint and severally liable. That means that you are all responsible for each other. So if one doesn't pay the rent, the rest of you will need to pay the rent. If one of you causes damage, the rest of you will also be responsible to pay for that damage. Okay? If you sign a license agreement, This is actually only a permission to occupy, and you would sign this if you lived with a resident landlord or a member of his family. Okay. So we have lots of students who come in to see us with various contracts. What we would say to you all is, when you get your contract, make sure that you read it, make sure that you understand it. If you don't, there's a whole team on the Student Hub who'd be more than happy to go through it with you. But make sure you read it first, and I'll write down your questions, because it's easier for us then to explain all the various terms. The main obligations, though, are, if you're a tenant, you need to pay the rent on time and in the manner agreed. If the landlord wants you to pay rent in cash, in 50p pieces, then that's what you do. Okay? Not that they do, they just want the money. You need to keep the property clean and in good condition. Not cause a noise nuisance. If you're going to have a party, invite the neighbours. Okay? That solves all the complaints. Okay? Report repairs and damage to the landlord straight away. He cannot be held responsible until he knows about it. So if you have a leak, don't let that leak continue, because if it causes damage, more damage than it should, you could end up paying and not the landlord. And of course, you need to return the property in the same condition as it was when you moved in. But the landlord also has obligations. He has to let you live in that property free from harassment. He can't just come around whenever he wants, knock on the door and say, hi. No, he has to give you reasonable notice, minimum 24 hours, but reasonable. Okay, so if he phones you in the morning and says, I want to come in the evening for a specific reason, that would be considered as reasonable. He also has to insure the building and his own contents, but not your belongings. So as I said before, I think the majority of you are living in halls. You are insured in halls, your contents, with Ensley Insurance. I don't know if any of you went and stopped on their stand today, but they do a really good student insurance for when you live outside of halls. So it might always be worth giving them a ring. So don't just get contents insurance, get accidental damage insurance. Because I can assure you that, you know, one day you're going to be running really late, you're going to grab that t-shirt, you're going to put it on the floor to iron, and instead of putting the iron up, you're going to put it down, and there's going to be a big hole. The landlord will find this, and he will charge you for the whole carpet, not just for the hole. But if you've got your own damage insurance, that will cover it, and it won't cost you anything. We've said loads of legal words, haven't we? And I waffle on because I've been doing this for a long time. But don't panic. In the back of the private housing guide, we have a wonderful glossary that gives you all the words and all their meanings. So just to help you while you're reading those contracts. I'm now going to hand you over to Pat.
As Sue has just mentioned, one of the landlord's responsibility is to protect your security deposit. If you sign a tenancy agreement, by law, the landlord or agent must protect your deposit in one of the government-approved schemes. The key for you to check that your deposit is going to be paid into one of the 3 government-approved schemes that are shown here on the slides. Within 30 days of you paying your deposit, you should receive confirmation from your landlord or agent that the money has been paid or registered with one of the schemes, plus the prescribed information about that scheme. If you'd like to check whether the deposit has been protected, simply go to the website of that scheme and put in your property postcode. It's that simple. If you have problems getting your deposit back at the end of the tenancy, each of the 3 schemes have a dispute service and they'll help you negotiate with the landlord or agent to get your money back. But if that happens, come into the hub. Any one of our team members will help you with trying to get your deposit back. Step 7. In the hub, one of the recurring reasons for students not getting back their deposits at the end of their tenancy is because they've not completed thorough inventories. So when you move in and out of the property, we strongly advise that you complete a detailed and thorough inventory. This is a document listing the condition of the property and all of its items. For example, in the bedroom, there are multiple grease marks from blue tacks across the wall. If there are marks on the walls when you move in and you don't note this on the inventory, you could be held responsible for the damage when you leave and asked to pay for the entire room to be repainted, which could cost you several £100s. Photographs are a quick and easy way to prove the state of the property, and we know that you'll be taking your mobiles with you when you move in. Take pictures. When you're leaving, take pictures. It's that simple. So, other reasons why your deposit might not have been returned. Missing items. I would suggest a couple of weeks before you are due to move out, you check the inventory yourself, and if you find that items are missing, go out and replace them. Because I can assure you it'll be a lot cheaper for you to replace the items than the landlord, as he or she will just charge you more for the items that are missing. Damage to the property. If you damage the property, admit it. I can assure you, you'll be found out. Don't try to hide the iron burn in the carpet by moving the chair over it. The landlord or agent will move the chair, so make sure you put this in writing and take a photograph of the damage. Non-removal of rubbish. Again, get rid of the rubbish. Don't leave it for the landlord. It will cost you money. He'll charge you rent for every day that rubbish is in the property, so just remove it. However, one of the most common reasons found for deposits being withheld. Here are some examples. Failing to clean. Now, isn't that absolutely minging? Who would leave the property in that condition? Seriously, if I was a landlord and you left my house in that condition, you wouldn't get a penny back. Seriously. So, leave the property looking like this. In fact, buy Domestos bleach if you hate cleaning. So, it's true, buy Domestos. The landlord is entitled to have his property returned to him in the condition it was when you moved in. So, looking like this. So when you move out, so when you moved in, the property has been cleaned to a professional standard. So then the landlord will expect it to be returned to him in the same condition. Remember to check your inventory thorough. Take the photographs when you move in and when you're moving out. We have links on our website that will provide some guidance regarding inventories and how to complete them. In fact, you can come to the Student Hub and we'll help you. I'll hand you back to Sue. Thank you.
Oh, it's me again. You must be really fed up with me by now. Not long to go. So I'm just going to give you a quick summary. Okay, so you know you have who you want to live with, what is your budget, where you would like to live, and when you can move in and how you can get some help. Well, one of the places that you get your help is at the Student Hub. We're here all summer. We don't go home the same as you, so we're here and we're on hand to help. But as I've said before, don't worry about finding accommodation now. I know you're all going away for Easter and you're all going to be revising like crazy for your exams. But throughout May, we call it our May Housing Mayhem. We're going to go on tour to Southside, Woodward and Hammersmith. If you don't live in those buildings, it doesn't matter. You can still come along. We're going to have pizzas and drinks, and we'll be there to help look at your contracts, to help you find flatmates, and to give you some advice, more advice and information. We're also going to have another housing fair, so you can go and meet different estate agents and different hall providers and landlords, and that's at the end of May. And we're also going to do some drop-in evenings in the student hub where we're going to be open late and you can come in and ask. But I've rattled on about the student hub, but do you really know who we are? Does it work? Aha. Okay. You are all too kind. I do apologise for the acting. We're not hidden away. We are on level 3 of this building. Please come and see us. That just leaves me to say thank you to Naz and James, to members of my team who've been around this evening, and to you. I hope you enjoyed the evening and that you've got some good information from it. Thank you very much.